Howdy gang, in today's episode of Pool School, I am going to deliver on a promise, and that is to do a video on how to replace a side feed autofill valve for your pool. I already did one for a bottom feed toilet style, and now we're going to do one for a side feed. So what do you say we get to it? Alrighty gang, before we dive in, I want to thank you once again for watching. Remind you to like this video if you do. Subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already, and please share this channel with all your friends, family, acquaintances, co-workers, etc. who own pools and are looking to save a buck or two servicing their pool themselves. Okay, so I want to talk about today installing a side feed autofill float valve, and I'm going to go over the parts that you need or the things that you're going to need to do it. So let's do that right now. Okay, so here are the three things that you're going to need to replace a side feed autofill float valve. So this is the float valve, okay? I don't even know who makes this. It's I don't know, that's what it says right there. You can read that. It says 3/8 inch autofill, and this is the one that I use. I like it. It's very cheap. I get it from my pool supply company. I do not know the brand, but that's what I have. One thing to keep in mind, this little piece right here, you can unscrew that, but don't do it. This is the adjustment for it, because you can then unscrew that and tilt it up and down to change the level and how high the water you want. This part right here is the bottom right here. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure that that is on the bottom. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's your auto feed valve. You want a pair of pliers or channel locks or something that's big enough that when they're open, they will go around this nut. Not this part, not the threads, but this nut, this geometrically shaped thing right there. Okay, I think that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexagon. Okay, and you're going to want some Teflon tape. All right, now this is not completely necessary, but I tend to like to do it because I want to avoid any seepage of water that I can, and I'm going to wrap it around those threads. All right, so let's go back and let's talk about the steps you need to take to replace one of these babies. Alrighty, just to get as basic as possible, if you have not done so already, you want to identify where your side feed autofill valve is. Now there's my cover for this one, and you'll notice there's a little webbing in there, so I gotta be a little bit careful when I flip this open. I'm probably gonna use this pliers to lift this up just in case there's a critter underneath. All right, there isn't, and I'm safe. But a lot of times, especially in the heat in Arizona, you will get black widows or brown recluse spiders building nests in here, or their web, and then they'll house themselves in there because it's cool and damp, and you don't want to stick your finger in anywhere near black widow or brown recluse. All right, so there's my old side feed autofill valve, and you notice that it's down and the water in the pool is a little bit high. If you look over to that side over there where the skimmer opening is, looks like it's covering quite a bit of it. So that's why I know that this valve is leaking a bit. It doesn't, I can't hear it, but it definitely is, because I've been watching it for weeks. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do after identifying that is I'm going to come over to my water supply. All right, you've got to turn off your water supply. That's big, that's most important. So this is the pipe right here that goes to the auto feed valve, or the autofill valve right here. This is coming off the main hose spigot. So there is my toggle to turn it off. Okay, so just as a general rule, when it's in line, when this toggle is in line with the pipe, that means it's on and water can flow through it. You want to make it perpendicular, like so, and that means that it's off and there's no more water flowing through it. Now I can go to the unit of the actual autofill valve and take the old one out, put the new one in. So let's get to that. All right, so you first want to get your pliers in there, and you're going to want to loosen this up a little bit. Once you get it broken free, it should unscrew fairly easily. If you notice, I can just turn it and I can unscrew this. All right, and if you prefer to use a pair of pliers, that's fine. Sometimes it gets a little stuck, so you have to kind of help it out a little bit, but this one is fairly easy to do. So I'm just going to unscrew this. Now, when you put the new one in, I wouldn't do what I'm doing because you can damage the valve, but this valve is already shot, so I can put a new, I can kind of torque on it a little bit. Just gonna make sure I don't break it off. And there it is. I've unscrewed that. You notice there is the old threads with the remaining of the Teflon tape, okay? All right, so just so that's what it looks like. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this Teflon tape and I'm gonna wrap up the end of this. I usually wind it about 2.5 to 3 wraps. And I'm gonna go in a decent way, at least halfway up from this part all the way up. So I'm gonna pause it for just a moment while I do that. Alrighty, so that's done. I've wrapped it with Teflon tape, all right? And that just helps me get a better seal on the threads when I screw it back in. Now, what I'm gonna do now, some people will take this actually off and then screw this in, but I don't worry about that. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take this and fit it into the hole there, and I'm gonna start screwing it in, all right? And again, don't force it. It should fit in there and thread in fairly well. You might have to play with it a little bit like I am right now, but you wanna get it straight, and then you wanna start screwing it in. There we go, and it screws in very easily. I'm just turning it clockwise. Remember what they say, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now remember what I said, if you can see right down here, that's the bottom of the valve. So that section right there has to face down, okay? Because that's how it turns on and off. Now what I'm gonna do is as I crank this, okay, that's where it starts to get tight. So now I'm gonna take my pliers and I'm going to start using these to give me one more turn. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. If you find that you get to a place where you're like halfway around and it's facing up like this, that's upside down right now. So that's not gonna help me, right? So I wanna make sure that I can get it to where it's down and snug. Don't over crank this, okay? You want it tight, but sometimes what happens is as you go to put this in like this and you turn it, you get to a point where, okay, like right now, if you notice, hang on, I'm almost there. All right, it's straight up and down now. If I try to turn this anymore, chances are, and I've learned from experience, that what's gonna happen is it's gonna bottom out and it's gonna get as far as it can go when it's facing up. And so I'm gonna stop here and leave it right here. Now, if you notice, this is my float. So before I turn the water on, I can adjust this a little bit. So I'm gonna unscrew this wing nut right here. And you'll notice when I do, see how the float just came up, all right? And I can kind of set it to where I want it. So I'm gonna put it down a little bit because my pool's a little bit full. So that's probably my adjustment right there. And then you can fine tune this later once you get the water turned on and you allow it to do its job. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna walk back over to my water supply and I'm gonna turn it back on. Just do it like this. There we go. All right, so the toggle's in line, so that means I have the water on. I'm gonna come back to my valve and see if I've got water. First of all, I'm gonna listen. Okay, now if there was any leak, I would hear something like this. Hear that? So when this drops, when the water level in the pool drops, this goes down, and open, see the water flowing in there? And then when the water gets full enough, this lifts, shuts the valve off, and does its job. So that's how your autofill valve works too. So I've pretty much done my job. I'm listening, I don't hear any water. Now I will check this over the next couple days because honestly that water level should drop down a little bit so as to only cover half of the skimmer opening. And then once I do that, I'll know I did a good job and it's all set to go. If I need to, I can come back and adjust this however I want. That's pretty much how it's done, folks. Just gonna close my lid and I'm back in business. So my friends, that is how you replace or install a side feed autofill valve. I hope it made sense. Pretty easy thing to do. Just remember, don't over tighten it. And again, because of the way that the thing can bottom out, you might get to where you're tightening, all of a sudden it stops in a wrong position where the water flow part is not facing down and you're going to have to adjust it back. So don't over crank it. Make sure it's snug and tight. You might need some pliers to help it, but other than that, it's a pretty easy job to do. Anyway, hope that made sense. If you have any questions or comments, remember you can post them in the comment section below this video, or if you'd like, you can email me directly, and my email address is going to come across the screen right here. I'm going to turn it this way because it's a little bit bright out here. It is going to go right across the bottom of the screen right here. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Again, kennypoolschool @gmail.com. I want to thank you again for watching. Remind you to like, subscribe, and share this channel and these videos with your friends. And it is over 100 degrees in Arizona now, so that means people are jumping in the pool. So wherever you're at, remember this: be safe, have fun, and always, always, always watch those kids, those pets, and even the elderly around water. And I will see you next time.